world of cable news screaming and social media echo chambers, it's easy to lose the signal in the noise. Every day, policy is debated, votes are cast, and your tax dollars are spent. We cut through the headlines to bring you the critical context you need, focusing on what's really going on in news and politics. Welcome to the Analytical Iowan Podcast. This is your daily dose of fact-driven politics. Let's analyze today's news. Here's Eric.
And we are back here on the Analytical Iowan Podcast. It is Saturday, March 28th. As I'm recording this, getting to it a lot later in the day than I ever anticipated. But today was No King's Day. And we had a huge protest today. Seeing tons of videos of people out in the streets. There's an estimated, of course, because they don't go out, they don't count everybody. 9 million people out just in the United States out protesting, and there's probably, that many more around the world. Now, once again, because I have to say it for the MAGAs, they're going to come out, of course, and they're going to say a couple of things. And be ready when we talk about no kings. They've got their talking points. First talking point they are going to mention is, of course, going to be, well, isn't it funny how all the jobless liberals are out able to protest? First of all, it's a motherfucking Saturday. And two, January 6th, 2021, when a literal mob rioted, stormed the Capitol, and tried to overthrow this country, which they like to forget. They like to call it a peaceful protest. It was just a tour group, even though our eyes could see what was going on. They erected a gallows outside of the U.S. Capitol, and they were chanting, "Hang Mike Pence." They were talking about hanging the sitting vice president. And all of that was horrific and shocking. That was on a weekday. That was a Wednesday, I believe. Might have been a Tuesday, but it was one of the two. This was another protest on a Saturday. Most people, not everybody, I was not one of the lucky ones, but a lot of people have Saturdays off. In the corporate world, you work Monday to Friday. A lot of business settings, they go Monday to Friday. Now, there's a lot of businesses that are 7 days a week. Some of them still are 24 hours a day, or they run 3 shifts or what have you. But people were off work. They were able to go. And some people specifically planned for this. They used their PTO, their vacation. If it was just simply a matter of scheduling a day off, they scheduled their day off so they could go to the No Kings protest. So MAGA is going to come out first and foremost, and they are going to talk about how it's amazing that all these liberals were able to go out, when we were out working. Well, again, it was a weekend. Two, depending on your typical conservative, yes, your typical conservative, the ones that are employed, they do work hard, and don't get me wrong. A lot of your MAGAs, they do have jobs. Some of them, like your rural voters, like your farmers, are 7-day-a-week jobs. Your chores don't stop, right? And a lot of them that are just, barely scraping by, that are out here, just working any job they can find in their small town. Those jobs, maybe they are 7 days a week, so they don't get that day off. But a lot of your more educated liberals, and not all liberals are highly educated, but we've noticed a pattern, and so have conservatives, and I've talked about it before. I know somebody here in my own life, friend of mine, been a friend of mine for a couple of decades, I think, at this point, but he went to college, got a degree, got educated, comes back, and coincidentally, actually, the two things had nothing to do with each other. But coincidentally, around the time of after getting his degree, decided to no longer be a practicing member of any religion has his own beliefs and goes from there and says, I don't need to be part of a religion. But when he did, one of the first questions his father asked him, his dad goes, what, are you too smart for God now? And they equate the two, right? You go to college, you get education, you even go to public school. You graduate top of your class and you get educated and you learn a few things. And typical MAGA Republicans make it you feel like you don't know anything, or that you're you don't know the important things. Like, rather, like they look down on people with education. So a lot of educated people, though, that are in the professional sphere, and this is not knocking anybody else that would be considered a professional sphere, because to me, and I was in a live with somebody recently where we were talking nursing, and nursing should have always been considered a profession. I think the Democrats, when they get back into power in 28 or after the 28 election, they need to go back through and fix the damage that this administration did to the nursing profession, where they don't view nursing as a professional degree, and grant them again the ability to have student loans and things for nursing degrees, because they are every bit the professional job that this administration doesn't want to view them as. But my point is, certain professions, typically, let's think lawyers, accountants, a lot of your business degrees, but a lot of your jobs that require education, your education degrees, some of the ones that you need for like daycare providing, things like that. A lot of those jobs, though, they are Monday to Friday, and they are 8 to 5. They're business hours. And what I'm getting at here is they would have the weekends off. So yes, liberals would be able to be out protesting. But this protest was different. And it was different in a way that MAGA can't understand. The 30% of that MAGA voting base or the Republican voting base that is MAGA. And a chunk of that 30% had not voted or were very against being involved in politics until Donald Trump came along. He said the things that they felt, right? He gave them someone to blame for their life being horrible. All of those things, right? Donald Trump made it okay to be, a problem, right? Or they made their problems okay, I guess, is what I'm getting at. And he brought in voters into the Republican Party. But now that voting base, that 30% of the voting base will vote in lockstep with Donald Trump all of the time. And they're losing the other 70%, the Republican Party is, of their voting base. And it was evident in these No Kings protests. And not even, this time there was huge anti-Trump protests in the villages. And if you know anything about the villages down in Florida, the villages are retirement communities. They are, the way I understand it, it is multiple retirement communities all in that same area. And it's a bunch of old retired boomers. And it is very deep, very Republican, very conservative. Now, there was a large turnout of voters in the villages during the 2024 election campaign that at least appeared to be out. They were out doing golf cart rallies, and they were holding events, and they were cheering Kamala and everything else. So maybe it shouldn't be a surprise, but it seemed like it. I saw several videos of just miles of golf carts, cars, old people standing, sitting, holding signs, doing whatever, right? They were out there protesting the things this administration was doing. And if that can happen in deep red villages in Florida, it can happen anywhere, right? We are looking at these elections as we get every day closer and closer to the midterms. There are more and more elections happening. And so far, the Republican Party has flipped 0 seats. They've held some, don't get me wrong, they've held some, but they have not flipped any that were held previously by Democrats. They have only flipped seats, or they have only held seats. They have not flipped any. Democrats have flipped at least 30, maybe 31 seats now, going all the way back to the beginning of Donald Trump's presidency in response to the things this administration is doing. The old guard Republicans are saying no, they don't support everything that this administration is doing. And if I was a Republican member of Congress, if I was a senator, if I was a member of my state legislature, I would be second guessing whether or not I want to stick around. There are tons of members of Congress who have decided to not seek reelection. And I say tons, but I think it's like 60 between both parties. But it's like 40 or 45 of them in Congress are Republican. Now, 40 or 45 Republicans not seeking reelection, retiring early, either or, is large when you consider that the Republicans hold 218 seats in the House of Representatives. They hold, what is it, 53 seats in the Senate. Combined, that is only 261, and 40-ish are not seeking reelection, deciding to go do other things. Some of those, yes, they did get promoted to other positions, like Markwayne Mullins, or Mullen, whichever it is. But like 40 out of 260, that is roughly, very, very quick math, 17, 18%, something like that. They're like, fuck this shit, I'm out of here. And when you consider that not all of the Republican senators are up for re-election, I think they are only defending, is it 17 seats this year? I think. Something like that, 17 to 33, maybe. You know what? Let me look to be sure. But they're not defending that many seats. This time. So let's see. Trying to find it here. Trying to find out exactly how many. Seats up for election. Okay, they're defending 20. Okay. They're defending 20 seats in the Senate out of the 33. Now, a lot of them are safe. I think that the Democrats could safely flip 4. Um, and depending on who you talk to on some of these, on like on TikTok lives and things like that, there are several panels I get myself routinely into. And there's one gentleman, his name is Roy. He has routinely said he thinks Democrats could get up to as high as he goes to 57. That would be 10 flips for the Democrats, and I think that's a little high. He might have said 55. Either way, 8 to 10 I think is very, very high. But when you're looking at they're holding 240 seats, less than 240 seats that are up for re-election this year, and like 40 of those 240 are not seeking re-election. That's a sixth. That is about 18%. That is a lot. And you're always going to have some, retirements. You're going to have people who don't seek re-election, et cetera. But the fact that a lot of them are jumping ship should be starting to worry the Republican Party, and they should be looking at some of these special elections going on and going, we got 9 million people out, and we've lost 30 seats so far. We need to do something. Now, maybe they're waiting until after their primaries are done to go after Donald Trump, but it's getting to the point that they need to do something, right? And with these No Kings protests, as they were out in over 3,000 cities, rather, across the country, and I mentioned it on TikTok, I did not get to go, had to work, but I did get to be out and about during the day for just a little bit. Between working and everything else going on. And just out in the community, I saw in my small little town somebody wearing a No King shirt. And if I would have been in a different situation than I was, I would have probably said something. But as you guys have probably noticed, I don't talk about my job other than the fact that I have one. And I do that on purpose, because I don't want my job coming back and saying they don't like what I'm saying on social media. I never mention my job. I don't mention any identifying information, and I try, unless I'm talking to coworkers specifically while at work, I really try not to dig into politics while I'm doing anything out in their logos, right? While I'm wearing anything with their stuff on me, just because I don't want to deal with the blowback. So I happen to have been out wearing, uh, I wasn't in uniform, but I did have their logo, on my person at that point. I was wearing, I think I was out wearing my hat, with the logo on it and everything. And didn't want to deal with any headache, even though I don't expect people on the left to cause any problems. I just don't deal with it, right? And this goes back over 2 decades, back to when companies were just starting to put out internet and social media policies. There was a coworker I had at a particular job, and the company had a dedicated team that they paid at the corporate level, probably making more than almost everybody at our location, but they were paying them to do nothing but scroll social media. This was 20 years ago, before social media got to be what it is today. And they were scrolling social media looking for references to the company. And all this employee put, like 10 minutes before they had to go to work, was, ugh, I don't want to go to work today. Or I don't want to go to work today. Or something to that effect. I mean, it was 20 years ago. Memory's getting a little faulty. And in that 10-minute window, maybe it was 15, but they hadn't even made it to the building yet from the time they posted it uh, the boss got an email from corporate with a screen grab of that post and one word, and that said terminate. And that person no longer had a job. Now, even before that, I was never really mentioning that particular place of employment. But when you're, early 20s, just getting going, and knew I needed the job and liked what I did at the time, if I knew what I knew now back then, I wouldn't have cared as much. But, I would have probably switched careers because things didn't work out long term. But anyway, uh, you know, it scared me a little bit. And ever since, I've just had that in the back of my head. And it's only gotten worse for a lot of these companies. Uh, as part of continuing education, not that long ago, I took some college classes. And by not that long ago, I guess it was getting to close to 10 years ago, but still, I took some extra college classes. And as part of these, I had to take retake an intro to college course, even though I had previous degrees and things like that, but because it had been so long and it wasn't one that had been offered when I went the first time, I was required to take it. And it wasn't so much intro to college, but I think it was intro to my actual chosen degree at the time. But as we're sitting through it, they're talking about all of it, and it made a lot of sense because we're talking about companies and doing social media and things like that, and found out now that, and I'm sure a lot of you know about this, but there are companies that all they do is scroll social media. They they do just what I was talking about. They're out there looking for um, positive and negative references to what they're doing. I mean, now you have a job that it years ago, and I can already hear if I were to get that kind of a job, my folks would say that can't be a real position. Nobody would pay you to do that. But all of these major brands now have a person or a team of people who run their social media, and they have like their own, TikTok page, or they have their own Instagram or whatever. That is part of what companies do now. It is a paid position. Beyond that, they also do things like um, scrolling Instagram, or not Instagram, Indeed, and they're out looking for applicants. And even if you're not actively applying to them, if your resume looks like something they are interested in, they will reach out. And I've had it happen multiple times. I have no intention right now of switching jobs unless this takes off and I can start making, $1 million a month doing a podcast. And I'm joking about the million, but you know what I mean. Making enough doing this that I would make this my full-time job. But anyway, I get emails. We think you'd be a good fit working for our company. And that's now a whole thing. So I'm where I was going with all this is how I'm very cautious now about saying anything politically out in public, one way or the other, even if the person appears that we are on the same side. But I'm always paying attention. I always see and I hear things, and I don't see when I'm out anymore. Maybe you guys have noticed this. Not seeing the Trump stuff out in public. For those of you that follow me over from the Rational Boomer, maybe you remember, maybe you don't. Years ago, uh, going into the 2024 election, I think it was, I was talking to Boomer, the Rational Boomer, and talking to Mike and saying, yeah, there's a guy down the road. He was constantly flying one of those huge FJB flags, you know, fuck Biden flags, those kind of things. If it wasn't one of those, it was a Donald Trump flag or it was MAGA flags. I mean, he had like 4 or 5 that he would rotate through. And he also had a tree stump in his yard. But this wasn't your typical tree stump. No, it was cut off about 10 foot up, and it was painted red, and he carved Trump into the tree and painted it blue. And about the last 6 months to a year now, I've noticed, about 6 months ago actually, he took it down, cut the tree down to a proper size, as far as a stump, like what you would expect, cut off very close to the ground. The flags have disappeared entirely, and wasn't long after I noticed that, about a month later, I noticed a for sale sign in his yard. And I think he realized that he wasn't going to get anybody to buy his property with those kind of things, and it was going to hurt him. And that's what it's going to take for MAGA, right? Everyone wonders, how are we going to get MAGA to come around? How are we going to get them to see things our way and side with us and do all of this? It's when it comes back to bite them in the ass. And I think that's part of what's going on with these No Kings protests, trying to bring it back full circle. Why you're seeing people in the villages coming out, in other red areas coming out. I mean, all 50 states had No Kings protests with varying degrees of turnout, but they were all there. And it's because Donald Trump and his policies are actually coming back to hurt us. Donald Trump has started a war in Iran that is raising the price of oil, and he doesn't know what to do, how to get it back down. Of course, they're going to come out and say, well, it's temporary. It's a temporary inconvenience for long-term gain. That's what Donald Trump likes to say about it, right? Except here's the thing. We had a temporary inconvenience with gas prices because of Donald Trump during during Biden's term, where because of Donald Trump's mishandling of COVID and his getting an agreement from the OPEC countries, which included Iran, but a lot of it had to do with Saudi Arabia, to cut production, they were able to keep gas prices low. And then as people started driving after the COVID lockdown, and after the vaccine was ready and all of that, people started getting back to work and being able to travel and do things like that. Once the Democrats were back in power, well, suddenly demand outpaced supply by a lot, and we got up here over $5 a gallon. I think it was 5.5 at its highest point. I don't think it ever crossed 6 here, but I know some parts of the country did. And we still heard about it, even though when Joe Biden left office, or gas here on election day, because I remember doing a TikTok about it right before election day. Gas here was like $2.68 a gallon. Okay. Just Wednesday. And I haven't been out where I needed to go get gas since then, but I had reason to be out and about Wednesday and went past a gas station. And mostly because there's not one on my typical daily commute to work. But had to go past the gas station anyway. We were at $3.99 for the cheapest possible option. Donald Trump has caused the gas prices to go up. And now the Republicans are trying to use what we talked about, our defense of Joe Biden, by saying, well, presidents don't set gas prices. No, they don't. They don't call your local gas station and say, set that at $3 a gallon, set that at $1.99. But their policies do affect gas prices. And Joe Biden didn't have any policies that were bringing gas prices down. He just got the blame for things that were in effect while he was president. That's the difference, but MAGA doesn't see that, right? Donald Trump has actively done things that has caused gas prices to go up. He comes out, they attack the Strait of Hormuz, or they attack Iran. Iran closes the Strait of Hormuz, rather. And now there's 20% less oil and natural gas floating through the strait, not to mention all of the fertilizer and other things that come through there as well. Everything's going up. And as we saw during COVID, when fuel goes up, prices go up, right? Diesel here was, when gas was still $3.48 a gallon, diesel was $4.69. So now that we're up to $3.99 a gallon for regular, I bet you diesel is up to over $5 a gallon here. Now, I didn't look because the gas station I happen to go by does not sell diesel. I didn't go by the normal one I had to go out somewhere I don't normally head in town. But anyway, gas prices are going to continue to go up, which means prices which are already unaffordable are going to go up. And Donald Trump doesn't want to hear about affordability, right? He doesn't. He thinks affordability is a hoax created by the Democrats because his mind is gone. Sorry about that. I had to take care of something real quick. Lost my train of thought, but let's get back into it. Republicans, they're pushing for all of this stuff, right? But they're on the losing end. You would think that they would end up deciding that Donald Trump is not a winning strategy at this point. We're hearing about some candidates down here, just in general, like in Georgia's 14th district. No, I think it's Georgia's governor. I don't remember. It was one of the races I was talking to Will about, and I was on, I think, his live on TikTok actually when we were talking about it, and said that he was talking about this candidate for governor, and basically his only campaign ad isn't policy. It isn't what the other person is doing that's bad, or what he's going to fix, or how he's going to make anything better for the state of Georgia as governor. But instead, that he is going to end up going, and that he was endorsed by Trump. That was the big thing. But I was looking up something for a story I want to do. I want to talk about. I couldn't remember if it was something he actually said, but anyway, Donald Trump comes out and he endorses everybody, right? And this candidate for governor of Georgia, that's all he's running on, is that Donald Trump was endorsing him. And I think that's going to be a thing that may lead to Georgia flipping blue, potentially. Now we'll have to see how Georgia's race goes. But some of these people, they don't have policy. They don't have anything other than, the fact that they are supported by Donald Trump. and his endorsement's not worth a damn. Now, I did a whole podcast the other day talking about Donald Trump and this disastrous cabinet meeting. And I didn't even end up getting through all of it, right? Now, he goes ahead and he's talking in this cabinet meeting. And I believe it was in this cabinet meeting. He comes out and he says he was talking to the mayor of Philadelphia, and he meant to say, I believe, the governor of Pennsylvania, but not sure. And he comes out and he says, I was talking to the governor of Philly Dilly. Philly Dilly. Now, maybe he was trying to say mayor of Philadelphia and couldn't say it. He just comes out and he says these things, right? And nobody's got a clue what he's talking about. He doesn't know, and he didn't catch himself. Now, he did come out and he made a supposed goof. And he called it the Strait of Trump, I believe. Here it is. I want to get this. He says, Iran has to open up the Strait of Trump. I mean Hormuz, the president said in a speech, getting laughs, right? And he actually he said it meaning to be funny, which means he didn't write it. Somebody else wrote it for him, and it was probably practiced. He continues by saying, excuse me, I'm so sorry, such a terrible mistake. Feigning apologetics before clarifying, the fake news will say he accidentally said, no, there's no accidents with me, not too many. If there were, we'd have a major story. So what he's doing here and what somebody, obviously pointed out to him is that he needs to do this, right? Make it sound like he says something completely outrageous and then say you're doing it on purpose. You're being funny. Now, if you do slip up and say something down the road, they can point at it. You can go back and say, no, did it on purpose. I'm just trolling the media. And that his base, his mouth breathing base, is going to come by and go, yep, he's just trolling them libs. He's owning the libs. No, he's just dementia. He is just battling his dementia. His brain is mush. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Guarantee you he could not point to the Strait of Hormuz on a map. He keeps saying that we're in talks with Iran, that we're close to a deal, but Iran says no, we're not talking to him. So which is it? More likely we're not in talks. His brain is filling in gaps and he thinks he is coming up with terms. Now, his base is going to say, well, we have to trade our high gas prices for security because of Iran getting a nuke. Okay? Two things with that. And I want you to think about this. One, if Iran getting a nuke, and this was such a big deal that we had to go in, we had to blow up, a school, we had to do this, we had to do that, and we had to be in what is now a week 4, I think. We are almost at the 4-week mark of this conflict with Iran that they refuse to call a war because they can't officially, because only Congress has the power to declare war, and that hasn't happened. And they've been trying to pass war powers resolutions to limit his ability to use the military, but they don't have the support yet. Now, I've heard that Congress is going to be calling for a vote that certain people are trying to get them to flip. They're trying to flip the script instead, trying to get them to vote for a declaration of war and see if they can actually get enough people on board to do that. And I don't think they can. But anyway, we're in week 4 of this. It's raising gas prices, and there's no plan out, and Donald Trump doesn't even know where he's going with this because he was fed bad intel by Netanyahu. Now they asked him. Somebody did ask him. I saw a clip. And he basically said, "No, it wasn't Israel. Israel didn't tell me what to do. I made that decision. That was me." Because see, that's how Donald Trump operates, right? Donald Trump only thinks in the terms of himself. Now, he thought that going into Iran was going to be a winning play, right? He thought that Iran was going to cave. They were only going to be over there a couple of weeks, and that was going to be that. So there's no plan to get out of this war, right? Donald Trump just does things. And it's clear that he's backed into a corner, right? He wants us to believe he's the tough guy, he's the strong one, he's the one doing all of this. And now he's backed in, can't get out of it. What does he do? How does he get out of it? I mean, Iran's not going to give up. Iran's not going to let the Strait of Hormuz go and just open back up. Now they have been letting some ships through, but it's on the condition that the oil and natural gas and other things flowing through that strait, that they can't be bound for the United States. So how do we get out of this deal? It could come to a point where Republicans have to move from Donald Trump. Now, we were talking earlier about Republicans and how the seats they have up for grabs and the midterms and re-election chances and all of it, right? They got to be getting worried that their re-election chances are slipping through their fingers. Now, realistically, I want to talk about my thoughts as far as the Senate. I think the House is a foregone conclusion. I think it would take a miracle for the Republicans to maintain control of the House. I think, considering that there is currently only a 4-seat majority in the House of Representatives with 3 vacant seats, and all 3 of those could flip blue, it is entirely possible that happens. That, with that being said, I think the House, Democrats pick up at least 5 in the House. Almost guaranteed. Hell, the Texas gerrymander could backfire and we could pick up those 5 and maybe more that they tried to get rid of. Plus, you have California redistricting, and if that goes through, there's 5 more. There's the 5 they were, that's their flip, right? We could see that. So the House is a foregone conclusion. Now, we need to look at what happens as far as the Senate. Okay, what races could flip in the U.S. Senate? And I'm thinking realistically, the Democrats could pick up 4. Now, I'm not 100% sure. I'm going to look it up because I don't remember if Mary Portola, I think it is. If she's running for Senate. She was widely popular in Alaska, and that would be one. Now, this is an article from January where it says Democrats say Peltola can win Alaska's seat. Not sure if it's who's actually running for Alaska Senate. But here, Alaska is one that I think could flip. Now, I just found looking for something else. Listen, I love how that happens. You find different things. Now, I don't trust polls. We've talked about it. Polls have been wrong, including the Des Moines Register poll back in 2024 that said Kamala was going to take Iowa, although it was within the margin of error. Trump not only won Iowa, but he won outside of that margin of error. So these are the ones according to this Newsweek article. They have Maine. Maine was on my list. That Graham Plattner could beat Susan Collins. Now, the latest Emerson College poll released this week shows Plattner up 7 points, and Janet Mills leads Collins by 3. Both are outside of the margin of error, if that means anything. Another poll by Qantas Insight gave Plattner a lead of Collins of 49 to 42%. It showed Collins beating Mills. But if Plattner wins, that could be a pickup. Maine is one that I have said could be in play. North Carolina. I think Roy Cooper, very popular statewide Democrat, could flip North Carolina. Now, a Harper polling survey shows Roy Cooper up 8 points over RNC Chair Michael Whatley, 49 to 41%. A public policy polling showed Cooper up by 3 points. Okay. But still, North Carolina. This one says Maine, or not Maine, Alaska. We already talked about Maine. Alaska, typically viewed as a Republican leading state, is a Democrat top target. It backed Trump in 24 by 14 points. But candidacy of former Representative Mary Peltola, who held the state's at-large congressional district from 22 to 25, has boosted Democrats' hopes they can unseat GOP Senator Dan Sullivan. The latest Alaska Survey research poll put her at 48 to 46 points for Sullivan, with 5.6% were undecided. However, Alaska is different. Okay, Alaska has ranked choice voting. And now, if you're not familiar with ranked choice voting, I think a lot of states should actually take it because most states do what is called first past the post, which basically means you go in, you vote for one candidate, first person to cross the magic threshold of whatever number you need wins. Basically, whoever gets 50% plus one vote wins. Or, depending on your state, maybe you don't need the 50% plus one. Whoever gets the majority wins, right? First one to get the majority. Whoever ends with the majority. I shouldn't say first one because when you count totals, obviously it fluctuates. But anyway, with ranked choice, what you do is if you have 4 candidates, candidates A, B, C, and D, and you like candidate A, okay, you write, and you're just going to go down the line. You vote 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D, etc. And you like candidate A, but candidate A only gets 10% of the vote. Well, then they take your ballots, and this is why Alaska takes so long to count. Then they look at your ballot and they go, well, you wanted candidate A, but candidate A can't win. So they take everybody who put candidate A in the number 1 slot and they look at their next choice. And if nobody, after they looked at everybody's first choice, if nobody had 50%, they go to your second choices if your candidate's still in the race. So let's say you had candidates B, C, and D all had 30% of the vote. Okay. Well, now they're going to look at everybody who voted for candidate A, and they're going to look at who you all picked for candidate B, C, and D. Where did you put your next number for 2? And then they tally those votes up. And if nobody is across 50%, the lowest one gets dropped yet again. Let's say all 10%, or let's split it in half, 5% each. Let's say 5% each went to candidates C and D in this scenario. Okay. So everybody who voted for candidate B as their number one, he's now, or he or she is the lowest one. So you drop those. Okay. But then you look at candidate B, whoever voted for candidate B at number 1, and you see who did they want for their number 2. And if they voted for candidate A, who's already out at number 1, then you look to their third and you tally those up. And if that's still not enough, but at that point you should have enough, somebody should be the winner. Then you compare the final 2 and you go, okay, this person's the winner. Alaska's weird. So Alaska could be a flip. Okay. Texas could be a flip. Impact Research poll shows Talrico over John Cornyn and over Ken Paxton. We don't know who is going to be the Republican nominee for senator in Texas. It could be Paxton. It could be Cornyn. Cornyn is the incumbent. Donald Trump has not endorsed anybody yet. So that could be a potential pickup. Neither one is particularly strong, and Talrico is coming in doing great. And he is a white Christian male. He is everything the Republicans claim to be, and he's finding inroads. Okay, so you have, they're saying Maine, North Carolina, Alaska, and Texas. I'm including Iowa, Ohio, and there was one more. Ohio was a pickup. I thought Ohio could be a pickup with Sherrod Brown potentially getting the nomination, because that could, he's won statewide before. It could be a flip. Iowa, there's no incumbent. Could be a flip. A lot of people are sleeping on Iowa, but Iowa, as we've talked about in previous podcast episodes, used to be blue, or at least purple. We voted for in the first Reagan election, we were a Michael Dukakis state. We voted for Reagan the second time. Then we voted for Bill Clinton twice and Al Gore, and then Obama twice. We were purple, if not blue at one point. We were a swing state, and I think we could be again. So don't sleep on Iowa. Now, there was one more I thought could be a pickup. Trying to remember: Alaska, Maine, North Carolina, Texas, Iowa, Ohio. Where was the other one? It'll come to me, and I'll probably think about it after I'm done recording. But I thought there was at least 7 that could flip. Some outside chances could be potentially Kentucky, because Mitch McConnell's not running again. That could be one that could be problematic for Republicans. And the seat that was held by Markwayne Mullin in Oklahoma could also be up for grabs. That could be another potential one where there is some play. So we're looking at all of it, and I think it is entirely possible, especially considering the turnout for no kings, etc., that they could be really pushing to flip several seats. Now, if the Democrats get control of Congress in the midterms, I want to, set some reasonable expectations. Don't expect them to be able to end up fixing everything right away. First of all legislation passed would need Donald Trump's signature or a supermajority to vote around a veto. They're not going to have that in both chambers. Okay, it's just not going to happen. And then, what can they realistically do? Realistically, they are going to be able to block a lot of things Donald Trump gets done. And if they control the Senate, Donald Trump would not be able to realistically appoint anybody to any positions. No more judges get through. Should something happen to Alito or Thomas, no Supreme Court justices get through, etc. It's going to be all about making sure nothing gets worse while the last 2 years of Donald Trump's term. After that, then the Democrats are going to have a chance in 28 to increase their lead in Congress and maybe get past that 60 vote threshold in Congress for the Senate, so they wouldn't even have to worry about the filibuster, and then go from there. Then they would be able to turn around and actually get things accomplished. And then the Democrats have to actually do that in order to earn people's votes so they don't lose seats in the midterms and end up right back where we were. That is one of the things I am worried about the most. And that is that we end up, not getting enough accomplished in the first 2 years of the next Democratic president. And that people say, well, fuck it, the Democrats didn't do enough. Let's go with Republicans again. And we end up right back where we are, except next time it won't be somebody as dumb as Donald Trump. It'll be somebody who is worse because they're going to be smarter and having at least the same goals, and they're going to be able to hide it a lot better. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode of the Analytical Iowan Podcast. I want to thank you for taking the time to join me today. I hope you have a great day, and I will be back tomorrow with yet another episode because, as I say, there's always stuff to talk about. So I hope you have a good day, and I will talk to you tomorrow.
That was Eric. That does it for our analysis today. If you appreciated us cutting through the noise to get to the critical context, please make sure you're subscribed to the Analytical Iowan Podcast on Spotify and YouTube. We'll be back tomorrow. Thanks for listening.